Hey guys. This is what if Naruto was mentored by Kakuzu and became a bounty hunter. Watch as Naruto is mentored by Kakuzu to become a powerful ninja and bounty hunter, and follow him as he discovers that his new life requires a payment in blood to live successfully. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 1, Realizations. Out, get out, you damn demon! Uzumaki Naruto ran out the door of the shop, skidding around a corner and barreling into a nearby trash can in his hasty escape. The 5-year-old rubbed his temples to clear the pounding in his head and slowly sat up, looking over his shoulder to see if the shop's proprietor had given chase. When the young boy saw he hadn't, he heaved a sigh of relief and plodded down the alley he found himself in. Lost in thought, he emerged into the daylight of another of Konoha's main shopping streets, and wandered down it in the direction of the orphanage. His stomach let out a growl of protest as he passed a fruit vendor, and he subconsciously moved closer, hoping for something, anything, to abate the gnawing hunger. The vendor noticed his approach and shot him a dark glare that scared Naruto off, and he rejoined his original path, a hungry orphan. His lack of family was perhaps one of the greatest puzzles of Naruto's young life. When he'd gotten old enough to understand the solitude, he'd asked the third Hokage about his parents, but had received no real response, and so had gone to the library and attempted to research his lineage. Of course, he had limited reading skills, and the librarian had thrown him out with the warning to never come back again when she discovered him, so he hadn't gotten too far. But it seemed as though there were no records of any Uzumaki except for him in the few books he'd scrounged up. As if that wasn't strange enough, Naruto possessed unruly, spiky blonde hair, as bright and vibrantly colored as the sun, and crystal blue eyes, both extremely rare traits among the citizens of the Hidden Leaf. Some members of the Yamanaka clan possessed traits close to his, but their hair and eyes were much lighter in color than his, and they seemed close-knit enough as a family to not just abandon one of their own, if he was some distant relative. Naruto arrived at the orphanage and snuck in through the same window he'd escaped from, keeping an eye out for any of the matrons. He made it to his room, small and isolated from the other children, and sat on his futon in silence, the scar of being chased out of yet another store still fresh and aching. Reaching for the last of some nuts he kept hidden for emergency purposes, he settled himself back and ruminated on the day's events. That incident was not the first in which he had been chased out of a shop, or even been called a demon for that matter. The majority of the villagers, and even a fair amount of the shinobi, seemed to either outright hate him or, at the very least, act completely indifferent to his existence. This was the second strangest puzzle in the blonde's life. What had he done to deserve such hatred aimed at him? He was only 5 years old. And aside from attempting to nick an apple here or there to prevent himself from going hungry, as the orphanage matrons seemed to be as spiteful towards him as the rest of the populace, he couldn't think of a single thing that would warrant such animosity towards him. Unless... Naruto paused with a handful of nuts partway to his mouth, working through a new thought. What if something his family or clan had done was so bad, so despicably vile, that the villagers were taking their anger and grief out on him? It explained why everyone seemed to hate him, as well as why there was no mention of any Uzumaki in any records he could find. If whatever had happened was that bad, then it probably would have been stricken from the records. It all fit. The 5-year-old scowled at nothing in particular. It was such a stupid reason to hate him and make his life lonely. He couldn't be blamed for whatever his ancestors had done, he was just a child, and yet, it seemed as though the villagers were taking their grief or anger or whatever out on him. If the years of exile and mistreatment were any indication. Naruto stood up abruptly, an idea taking root in his mind. Fine, he decided aloud, I get that I'm not wanted. I'm outta here, everyone here can suck it. Silence greeted this proclamation, but Naruto nodded in assurance of his decision. 15 minutes later found Naruto beginning a trudge along a well-hidden path that led through the forest surrounding Konoha. He had gathered what meager belongings he had, including a small amount of money, and packed them in a shabby-looking backpack that appeared too big for his small frame. He glanced back at his old home one more time. Bye, Konoha. Better hope you never see me again, 'cause if you do, I'm gonna get you back for what you did to me and my family. With that declaration hanging ominously in the still air, Naruto turned around and didn't look back. Kakuzu jumped from branch to branch, growling at the protection the dense foliage the trees of the Land of Fire provided his latest bounty. He was frustrated that he hadn't caught the little shit yet. Then a kunai with an exploding tag shot at him and promptly exploded. He emerged from the smoke cloud with noticeably darker skin, a sign that he'd activated his Earth Release, Earth Spear technique, and his clothes smoking and somewhat frayed, but otherwise unharmed. Scratch that, he was pissed. The fucker was so dead. It wasn't like the guy he was chasing was even strong, just clever. He was a rogue chunin from Iwagakure, but had Jonin-level abilities in hiding, stealth, and traps. So basically, he was a coward. But he was a damn smart coward if he could keep ahead of Kakuzu, a keen analyst in his own right, for the number of hours the chase had lasted thus far. That was pretty much the only reason Kakuzu was following him, and because the little shit had tried to steal from him. That was just unacceptable. Kakuzu pushed a bit more chakra to his feet and managed to catch sight of his target. Adrenaline shot through his system as the excitement of the capture built, fueled by the sight of the renegade in front of him. Fortunately, he had a much larger chakra capacity than the Chunin, and as the chase had been going on for a decent amount of time, the other man's stamina was running low. It was time to act. Kakuzu performed 3 hand seals and summoned chakra to his mouth. Katan Zukoku! A condensed fireball shot from his mouth and impacted on a tree branch just behind the Iwa. The ensuing explosion felled several trees and sent his target flying. Behind his mask, Kakuzu grinned. Naruto didn't know how long he had been walking. The forest surrounding the Hidden Leaf village seemed virtually endless, and he was willing to wager that he had been wandering around for several hours at least. Then he heard the explosions. His ears perked at the loud noises, and he stopped moving and looked around. His eyes narrowed and he took off running northwest from his current position. Curiosity was a strange thing, Naruto supposed as he ran. Any normal person probably would have run in the opposite direction of whatever made such a huge ruckus. But as a young child, and what was more, a young boy, anything that went boom, or involved fire was automatically classified as cool. He didn't give consideration to the fact that it might be an enemy, or an assassin, or anything. He just had to know who or what was causing the huge explosion. 10 minutes later, he stopped at the edge of a clearing, mouth agape in a mixture of awe and horror. Several trees lay on the ground, smoldering and charred black. Huge chunks of bark were missing from standing and toppled forestry alike, branches broken and splintered, some hanging precariously from their perches. Leaves were scattered about the clearing, most of them burned to a crisp. Naruto stared at the destruction, eyes wide in amazement at who or what could cause such damage to the area. That should be a sufficient lesson on the merits of stealing from your betters. Naruto's head swiveled so fast he thought he heard his neck crack. Standing in front of one of the less damaged trees was a giant of a man, boasting a 6-foot frame to match his deep, guttural voice. A long black cloak hung around his body, falling to the knees of the deep green pants that were frayed at the cuffs, a pair of standard black ninja sandals on his feet. Some sort of tan cloth was covering his head and hair, disappearing into the recesses of his cloak, and a triangular piece of black fabric was sticking up in the front, tied in the back by a strip of cloth. In front of him, the Iwa had been unfortunate enough to get caught in the blast radius of Kakuzu's searing migraine technique. The explosion had sent him careening bodily into a thick tree trunk, which had splintered from the impact and broken the man's right arm and leg. As he sat on the ground, dazed and confused with blood dribbling from his nose and mouth, Kakuzu had appeared and proceeded to slowly approach him, a maniacal grin hidden by the black cloth covering his mouth and nose. The next 10 minutes had been particularly appeasing to Kakuzu's sadistic nature before the bounty hunter decided to end it. Naruto gasped as the tall man's hand seemed to emerge from the other ninja's chest, a large mass of black something attached to the hand, which disappeared into the sleeve of his cloak. The blonde thought he saw the giant's head twitch slightly in his direction, and so he quickly ducked behind a tree trunk to hide his presence. Taking several deep breaths, he heaved a silent sigh of relief when nothing immediately happened to him. He peeked around the edge of the tree, but only the dead body of the other ninja was there. Wah! Where'd he go? Humph. I thought I sensed someone arriving. Just some damn brat, though. Naruto saw red. He had had enough of being looked down upon. Who are you calling a brat? He shouted as he turned around and threw a punch that would merely hit the tall man's leg. In retrospect, Naruto would look back on that moment and realize that it was simply stupid to attack this man. He was clearly a ninja, and a powerful one at that, and Naruto had yet to even start attending the ninja academy back in Konoha. And even disregarding that, there was the fact that this man had already killed someone else, a fully grown man, and Naruto was only half his size, if that. So it wasn't altogether surprising that the ninja managed to simply sidestep his basic attack, but then his foot met Naruto's stomach and the boy slammed into a tree 50 feet away, blood spurting from his mouth. Normally, I would hardly bother wasting my time with a brat like you, mocked the ninja, taking slow steps forward and stopping a good 30 feet from Naruto's position on the ground. But I have had a particularly trying day, and that last kill, while satisfying, was not nearly as fulfilling as I thought it would be. My name is Kakuzu, brat. Remember it, so you can tell the devil that it was I who sent you to hell. Naruto could only stare in horror and fright as the man, Kakuzu, performed a series of hand seals and brought his right hand to his mouth, forming a ring with the thumb and index finger. Katan, Gokakyu no Jutsu. A giant ball of fire raced towards him and engulfed him, and then he thought no more. Kakuzu watched as his technique swallowed the young boy and waited until the fire died out, leaving the boy's body scorched and smoking. I suppose I should try for something a bit more challenging next time. The bounty hunter turned around and walked towards the body of the Iwa Nin, looting the corpse for anything of value. He found a small bag of money, not even worth the time to kill him, some exploding tags, worthless, as well as a couple of kunai, some shuriken, and a spool of wire, substandard quality, all of which he dropped on the ground. The only other thing of interest Kakuzu found was an empty sealing scroll which he promptly used to seal the body of the missing Nin. While he normally preferred to carry the bodies of his bounties for personal satisfaction, the Iwa Nin was unlikely to be worth much. And he'd already wasted enough time chasing him down. He wouldn't waste more dragging the corpse around on his back. He was about to leave when a wave of chakra, fouler than anything he'd sensed before, washed over the area, stopping him in his tracks. He turned back and watched as a strange, malicious, red chakra covered the blond boy in a vulpine-like shroud. His eyes narrowed slightly as the chakra boiled and hissed over the boy's wounds, slowly healing them and making the burns caused by his attack to disappear. How interesting, Kakuzu muttered. He grabbed one of the Iwa Nin's kunai and approached the blonde, who had started to moan and stir. When he was standing in front of the boy, he used the black threads in his body to detach his right hand and slide the kunai down the length of the blonde's arm, watching up close in morbid fascination as the red chakra hissed over the wound and healed it, not even leaving a scar. Naruto wasn't entirely sure what was happening. He remembered being hit by Kakuzu's attack, and then, pain. Lots of pain. He moaned as his body spasmed briefly, a prickly feeling like ants on skin running through his veins. It took a minute for the feeling to fade, and then he heard footsteps approaching. Please don't be Kakuzu. Please don't be Kakuzu. He stayed perfectly still, trying to play possum and praying that Kakuzu would think he was dead. Then there was a stinging feeling as a sharp object, a kunai, Naruto guessed, was dragged down his arm. He hissed slightly at the pain, but otherwise tried to remain as silent as possible. He heard nothing for a moment, and almost heaved a sigh of relief. Boy. Naruto flinched, recognizing the deep voice as Kakuzu's. He continued trying to fake death, even though he knew it was pointless. I know you are alive, boy. Open your eyes and look at me, or I will make sure you die for real this time. Deciding that it was better to obey than face the consequences, Naruto gave in and opened his blue eyes. Kakuzu was standing above him, an imposing, towering figure. A black cloth concealed most of his facial features with the exception of his strange eyes, pupilless green orb set in red scara, and the weird black triangle thing the blonde had noticed earlier was attached to a hydrate that held the crude symbol of a waterfall with a slashed line through it, a sign that Kakuzu was a missing nin from Takigakure, the village hidden in waterfalls. Not that Naruto could identify that. Hard green eyes stared down at Naruto, and the blonde had the strangest feeling that those eyes were penetrating his very being. Where are you from, boy? Around. Naruto hedged, hoping that Kakuzu didn't kill him. He'd rather not tell this stranger he was from Konoha, though he couldn't explain why. Apparently, Kakuzu didn't care enough to pursue that avenue. Do you have a Kekkei Genkai? What? Kakuzu sighed and fought down the urge to kill the brat. A Kekkei Genkai, he repeated, a special trait that runs through your family and is unique to it. Naruto blinked. Oh. I dunno. I'm an orphan. I don't know my family. Interesting, the other man mused. Kakuzu was silent for several moments, during which Naruto found the courage to speak up. Why? Naruto watched as Kakuzu seemed to debate with himself momentarily, or so it appeared. With most Kakuzu's face covered, it was hard to tell. Finally, he said, you seem to have some sort of healing ability that allows you to recover from injuries which should be fatal. Such an attack would have killed ninjas several times your age and possessed of talents far beyond what you have, which seems to be next to nothing, and yet you somehow survived it at point-blank range. Further, you do not have even a scratch to show that you were attacked in the first place. It is an anomaly. Naruto remained silent as he absorbed this information. So, he had some special ability that allowed him to heal from anything? That was pretty cool. Boy. Naruto focused his attention back on Kakuzu, who was still standing ramrod straight in front of him, body language stoic. In all my years, I have never extended such an offer before, but your ability to heal and withstand my attack is an intriguing one. Should you choose, you can come with me, and I will teach you how to properly harness this power. The blonde boy stared at Kakuzu. Here was a stranger, who had tried to kill him no less, offering him companionship and guidance, two of the very things he had always desired and been denied back in Konoha. And maybe Kakuzu would be able to help him uncover his family history and answer the questions he couldn't get answers for in the Hidden Leaf. Hurry up and make a decision, brat. I am not a patient person by any stretch of the imagination. Time is money, and I do not waste money. If you cannot decide, I can always garner a greater understanding of your ability by other methods. Naruto gulped at the unvoiced threat and bobbed his head quickly in agreement. Kakuzu was terrifying, but the blonde felt he was better off playing along with the man rather than opposing him. Okay, I'll go with you. Kakuzu smirked beneath his mask. A wise decision. Now, he trailed off. Naruto watched as Kakuzu seemed to stiffen, a statue in the destroyed clearing. Just when he was about to say something, Kakuzu moved. You are under my care now, brat, so you will do as I say, understood? When Naruto nodded hastily, Kakuzu continued, hide behind these trees and do not move, no matter what you may see or hear. Stay there until I tell you otherwise. This should not take long. The bounty hunter watched as the blonde did as he was told before jumping into the trees and moving quickly to the southeast. Within a minute, Kakuzu was stopped by the approach of 3 chakra signatures. 3 ninja, all wearing the masks and attire of Konoha ANBU, stood on tree limbs in front of him as he jumped to the ground, searching for better leverage. The former Takinin didn't know if they were there because of the explosions from his searing migraine attack or for the blonde boy who he suspected was from Konoha, but it was better to be prepared for either scenario. Stop, began the leader, what is your business within the land of fire? That is none of your concern, Kakuzu replied. Now move along. The 3 ANBU bristled. You have no authority here, warned the leader. Answer the question. I do not answer to you. Prepare to, NGH. Wincing, Kakuzu managed to glance down at the 2 feet of steel protruding from his chest before he fell prostrate upon the forest floor, the katana sliding cleanly from his body. An ANBU in a tiger mask stood behind him, the sword covered in a fiery aura, a sign that fire chakra was being channeled into it. The leader nodded. Good work. Now fan out and find the child. I suspect he's nearby. Not so fast. All four ANBU blanched as Kakuzu's corpse began to rise from the ground. It released a throaty sound which they assumed passed for a chuckle before saying, "It has been some time since someone has taken my life. You seem to have a fire affinity, though. I can replace my destroyed heart with yours." "Defensive maneuvers," barked the ANBU leader. "We don't know what he's capable of, but if he can survive a killing strike, we need to be cautious." "A smart move," Kakuzu commented as the other three ninjas split up, "but not good enough." Then he disappeared and reappeared behind the leader in a body flicker, plowing a fist hardened by the earth spear technique through the leaf knee's chest. Blood gushed from the wound in the dead ninja's mouth before Kakuzu allowed the body to drop to the forest floor. He observed idly, "It will take far too long to hunt down each of these remaining rats. I better get serious." Kakuzu threw off his cloak, revealing a torso and arms riddled with sutures that stretched over his shoulders and down his back. Said back sported 4 animal masks stolen from ANBU he'd killed in the past, one of which was broken. Then the Takinin's muscles bulged, and the masks popped off his back, black threads stitching closed the open wounds. 3 of the masks took on monstrous, animalistic forms, using the black tendrils that thrived in Kakuzu's body as a basis for their own form. The 4th mask collapsed to the ground in a puddle of black goo. The 3 masks took off in one direction, while Kakuzu headed in the opposite one. 10 minutes later, Kakuzu had cornered the ANBU with the fire chakra and had handily beaten him with water elemental attacks. The other 3 masks suddenly appeared and buried themselves seamlessly into Kakuzu's back, taking their rightful places as stationary objects once again. Kakuzu turned back to his prey. "Your teammates are dead, and you are about to join them. Do you have any last words?" What are you?" "I am a bounty hunter long thought dead. My name is Kakuzu, remember it, for it will be the last name you ever hear. Now die." With that, black tendrils slithered out from the stitch in Kakuzu's forearm and dug into the leaf shinobi's chest. The ANBU agent gagged as his heart was forcefully pulled from its cavity, pulsating within the mass of threads that held it. Kakuzu waited until the organ had been assimilated into his body before taking off the ANBU's mask, revealing glassy, blood-red eyes with 3 tomo in each one. An Uchiha, no wonder he seemed so skilled, and it also explains the high Katon affinity. Pity, he might have fetched a high price one day. Kakuzu let the black threads maneuver the mask to his back where it was sewn on to cover his newly captured heart. "I am full once again. Now back to the brat." Naruto waited for what felt like forever, though it had actually only about 15 minutes. When he heard Kakuzu calling, "Come out now, brat," he appeared from his hiding spot, taking in the slight puncture in Kakuzu's cloak. "Are you okay?" he asked, unsure if his concern was warranted. "A minor wound you will discover in time. Come, you have much to learn." The bounty hunter gestured for Naruto to climb onto his back, and the blonde did so silently. "So, brat, what is your name?" Naruto twitched. He didn't like being called a brat. "Uzumaki Naruto." "Hmph, very well, Naruto. First of all, do not get used to this. This is simply the most prudent method to escape the premises, as you do not have the training to do so. That shall be rectified very soon. Second, you will call me Kakuzu and nothing else, or I will kill you for your impudence. Honorifics are old-fashioned and meant to garner respect by those of higher standing within the hidden villages, to which we do not belong. Should you choose to test me, I will have to come up with a more inventive way of instilling respect in you. Lastly, your training begins now." Kakuzu jumped to the nearest tree branch, taking to the canopy to better hide his trail. Then began the lecture. "The most important rule you will ever learn is this: money is everything. The world revolves around money, even hell runs on money." Naruto listened to everything with rapt attention, taking in as much as he could. It was the beginning of a new life. Chapter 2, Teachers. Naruto concluded rather quickly that Kakuzu liked money. "Brat, did you hear what I just told you?" Naruto sighed from his position on Kakuzu's back. "Yeah." "Then what did I say?" "You were saying how any ninja that's worth more than 15 million ryo is a good bounty and worth huntin'." "Good. Maybe like was an understatement. Kakuzu was obsessed with money. That wasn't to say the bounty hunter wasn't upholding his part of the agreement. Throughout the entire journey, which was sped up thanks to the tall shinobi's efforts, Kakuzu had continued to lecture and tutor Naruto on the basics of the ninja world, including countries, hidden villages, kages, the rulers of the larger hidden villages, and anything else of importance he could think of. Suddenly, Kakuzu came to abrupt halt, throwing Naruto violently against his back with the sudden change in momentum. Kakuzu, why are we stoppin'? The older ninja's head turned slightly in indication of the question. We are on the outskirts of a small town within the Land of Fire, close to the border of the Land of Grass. I believe we are far enough away from any major village that we are safe from scrutiny, and so this town will be our temporary base of operations while you gain the skills necessary to become competent. Naruto nodded in understanding. So where are we? If memory serves, the town is called Onanji. It is relatively unknown, and therefore quite self-sufficient. I am sure we will find everything we need here. He paused and then growled, "Now get off," and Naruto immediately relaxed his grip, sliding off the giant's back. The two walked side by side until they reached the small village, entering it silently and veering to the right as Kakuzu spied an empty field of short grass nearby. He walked to the center of it, and turned around, gesturing for Naruto to stand about 10 feet away from him. The blonde shifted restlessly from foot to foot as Kakuzu stared at him, silently weighing his options. At length, the bounty hunter spoke, his tone low and commanding. "I am going to begin teaching you how to be a shinobi. Since you apparently have no training, it seems I will have to explain everything to you from the beginning, despite how irritating that is. Watch and listen. In order to effectively become a shinobi, you must learn how to access and utilize chakra." When Naruto opened his mouth to speak, Kakuzu shot him a glare that silenced him instantly. "I will get there, brat. Chakra is a combination of energy from your body cells and the mental and spiritual energy gained from physical exertion. You will first need to practice accessing your chakra in order to use it for jutsu. I will teach you that shortly. Now, ninja techniques can be broken down into 3 categories: ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu. Ninjutsu is the broadest category, incorporating the hundreds or even thousands of special techniques that ninja use in battle. You have experienced ninjutsu firsthand already. Naruto shuddered at the memory of the searing heat from Kakuzu's fireball, but otherwise remained silent and still. Taijutsu encompasses the realm of physical attacks. Genjutsu involves the use of illusions to confuse and disorient the enemy. Do you understand so far? Naruto nodded slowly. Ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu, ninja techniques, physical attacks, illusions. Got it. Kakuzu's green eyes narrowed, focusing intently upon the young boy. You are very fortunate that you met me, brat. I have one of the most extensive arsenals of ninjutsu you will ever come across in your lifetime. The basics of ninjutsu are as such. There are 5 main categories: Katon, Suiton, Futon, Raiton, and Doton: fire, water, wind, lightning, and earth elements. Each one is strong and weak against another. Water beats fire, fire beats wind, wind beats lightning, lightning beats earth, and earth beats water. Additionally, every ninja has a specific chakra alignment that places emphasis on which element he or she is strongest in, and therefore more adept at learning and using efficiently. Now I will show you how to channel chakra, simply to make you are aware of it. Put your hands in this position, continued Kakuzu as he performed the motion, positioning his left index and middle fingers upright and curling his right hand under the left, leaving the right index finger standing. This is the Ram seal, one of 12 different hand signs used to activate jutsu. The Ram also helps to increase concentration and allows for easier access to your chakra. Kakuzu waited as Naruto fumbled with the hand seal, clumsily putting his hands together in a decent replica of his own positioning. Now, focus within and try to bring your chakra to the surface. Naruto closed his eyes and tried to feel for something, anything, within himself. After about a minute, he opened his eyes to see his teacher watching him intently. Considering that you have had no formal training in controlling or even using your chakra, I cannot say I am surprised at this attempt, Kakuzu mused. Keep trying, I will return. The bounty hunter then left, walking towards the main thoroughfare of Onanji. He glanced around at the shops as he went, noting with his keen memory where all the places of interest, few as they were for future use. Stopping suddenly in front of a store, Kakuzu gazed at the sign with curiosity before pushing open the doors and heading inside. The proprietor, an average-sized man in his mid-30s, looked up from the counter, instinctively taking a slight step backwards at Kakuzu's imposing presence. How can I help you today?" he stammered. "Do you sell shinobi supplies?" "As some. Anything in particular?" Kakuzu merely smirked behind his mask. 10 minutes later, he exited the shop, a handful of supplies for his new charge buried within the folds of his cloak. He snorted to himself. "One brat with interesting abilities, and I find myself pandering to his needs and spoiling the little shit. How far the mighty have fallen." The bounty hunter wandered down the road again, taking a branch that led to one of the outlying farms when it appeared. A simple house appeared shortly thereafter, and he approached the dwelling, rapping sharply on the door. He heard shuffling from inside and waited momentarily for the door to swing open, revealing a tall man, though not Kakuzu's height, with short-cropped brown hair and intelligent green eyes. "Yes?" he asked, looking Kakuzu up and down. "Your name is Ryo, correct?" Ryo blinked, caught off guard. "That's correct. I don't believe we've met before. How do you know me? And who might you be?" "That is not your concern," Kakuzu stated dismissively. "You teach some of the local children, if what I have been told is accurate." "Even if that was true, I don't associate myself with people whom I've just met or don't trust. You seem to fall into both categories. Good day to you." He stepped back and began to close the door, but Kakuzu's hand shot out and grabbed the man's collar before it could shut, yanking Ryo up to his face. "Listen here, Ryo," Kakuzu sneered, "I do not have a lot of patience, so I will explain this to you in the simplest terms possible. I have taken an intriguing student under my wing to teach the ninja arts to. However, he is quite young and will require tutelage in the more mundane aspects of learning as well. Therefore, it will be your job to teach him what he needs to know with regards to reading, writing, arithmetic, and whatever else you can think of, while I handle the rest of his training. In return." Kakuzu paused and pretended to think, allowing the ominous silence to build tension. "In return, I will guarantee the lives of you and your pathetic family, as well as everyone else in this village. I am reasonably sure this place would not be sorely missed if it mysteriously vanished from what few maps it does happen to be on. So, do we have an accord?" It was a slight gamble to threaten the teacher, since he could easily request aid from the hidden leaf, but Kakuzu was confident that he could dispatch anyone who did come if such a scenario came to pass. Plus, fear was a powerful motivator, and the fact that he wasn't requesting anything more complex than taking on another pupil would hopefully detract from the instinct to call for help. Ryo stared at the ninja, his feet barely touching the ground, quaking as Kakuzu delivered his proposition. He gulped. Kakuzu noted the gesture, taking great satisfaction in it. "When do I start?" he asked meekly. "Excellent, I appreciate initiative. Come by tomorrow at noon, to the field at the entrance of the town. If you are not on time, then I will be forced to hunt you down, and I guarantee that you will not enjoy that. Good day," he finished, echoing Ryo's earlier dismissal with a healthy amount of derision. Kakuzu spent the next several hours wandering around the town, mapping out Onanji's landscape. He hadn't survived as a ninja for over 80 years by slacking off and making stupid mistakes. The only reason he had felt secure in leaving Naruto alone was because they were far enough away from any major village, primarily Konoha, that it would take some time for any search party to reach them, if any were in fact searching. He cut a wide swath through the streets, his height and obscured features screaming to the civilians that he was not to be trifled with. Onanji had little to offer as a threat, especially to a ninja of his caliber, but so long as he didn't antagonize the townsfolk, any more than he already had, he felt it was unlikely that they would do more than whisper about his presence. The town possessed a slew of different craftsmen, making up for a lack of quantity with an increase in quality, ranging from tanners to blacksmiths to tailors. Farms surrounded it, raising a variety of products and allowing for it to be, as Kakuzu had told Naruto earlier, almost completely self-sufficient, if slightly backwards, in his opinion. When the bounty hunter decided to return to the field he had left his new protege at, he fully expected Naruto to be passed out, unconscious from chakra exhaustion. He arrived just in time to see Naruto flop to the ground, sweat dripping from his face and breath coming in heavy pants, but still conscious. One eyebrow rose in surprise at Naruto's stamina, but he merely approached the boy and unloaded the bundle of camping equipment he'd picked up on his voyage through the town and been carrying around for a while. "Get up, brat," he ordered. "I'm not a brat," Naruto sulked, climbing shakily to his feet. Kakuzu chose to ignore him. "Can you sense your chakra?" Naruto's head bobbed, a pleased expression on his face. "Very well, show me." The blond boy shifted his legs so they were firmly planted on the ground and brought his hands together into the ram seal, closing his eyes. Several seconds passed before blue chakra swirled around him, weak but nonetheless visible. Kakuzu blinked in surprise. So, he managed to get it after only a couple of hours. Impressive, for a brat. Alright, that is enough. Naruto dropped his hands and opened his eyes, the blue energy dissipating as he straightened and looked at his teacher. "Do you remember what I told you earlier about elemental ninjutsu?" Naruto bobbed his head again, and Kakuzu was half tempted to slap him upside it just so he would stop that ridiculous motion. He reined in his rather hair-trigger temper as Naruto recited, "Water beats fire, which beats wind, which beats lightning, which beats earth, which beats water, right?" "Correct. You will recall that I told you every ninja has a specific chakra alignment with one, or on rare occasions, more than one, of these elements." Here, Kakuzu reached inside his cloak and pulled out 2 square sheets of paper. "This is chakra paper," he explained, "created from trees that are specifically grown with chakra within the land of fire. It is the easiest way to determine which element you have an affinity for." Kakuzu moved one of the sheets to his left hand and focused chakra to his right. The paper there immediately became waterlogged. "My main chakra nature is Suiton, though I possess the capacity to use every element. Now take this," and here Kakuzu held out the paper in his left hand, "and channel your chakra into it." Naruto reached out rather hesitantly and took the paper, staring at it momentarily before closing his eyes and focusing on the feeling he'd spent the last several hours discovering. He heard Kakuzu hm in what he could only guess to be interest before opening his eyes. The chakra paper in his hand had split down the middle, right where he had grasped it with his thumb and forefinger. He looked straight up into Kakuzu's strange green eyes. "What's this mean?" he asked, holding up the paper. "You have a strong futon affinity." "Is that bad?" Naruto hazarded. Kakuzu waved his hand in dismissal and Naruto could have sworn he heard the tall ninja snort. "There is no bad element. It is curious, though, wind affinities are quite rare in the land of fire. However, it is a very versatile element, primarily known for its ability to cut." At Naruto's lost expression, Kakuzu sighed. "The wind element is sharper than any blade, able to cut through virtually any object with relative ease. I will train you to hone that ability in time. However, you have done enough for today. We will get something to eat, and then get some rest. There is much to be done tomorrow, and time is money," finished Naruto before Kakuzu could. Kakuzu blinked once more in surprise before smirking beneath his mask. "Clever brat. You and I will get along just fine." Kakuzu woke later than normal, taking advantage of Onanji's anonymity to be a bit more relaxed than he might normally be. He sat up, head scratching the top of the tent he had bought the previous day, and watched Naruto sleep as cluttered thoughts roamed his mind. The boy was talented, Kakuzu would grant him that. He seemed to have an unusually large amount of stamina, which for ninja translated to a larger chakra capacity, always a good thing. Although his grasp of language was a bit lagging, and Kakuzu assumed therefore that his reading and writing talents were also behind, Ryo would be around to fix that. Such basics were more important than any of the ninja arts Kakuzu could teach him at this point, serving as the foundation of his education. Ryo wasn't necessary. After all, Kakuzu could read and write and execute other simple educational exercises. But with the teacher taking Naruto under his wing, Kakuzu was free to bounty hunt and keep his coffers flowing while Naruto learned. Plus, Kakuzu was sure that he would end up killing the kid if he was forced to remain trapped in one place training him. He'd lived by himself for far too long to so quickly adjust to a life of caring for another human being. Besides, as it stood, the blonde was simply going to be an asset to his operation. His intention was to raise the boy to become a competent shinobi and then release him upon the world, taking a percentage of his future income to offset the cost of training him. It was a long-term investment, in no small part because the bounty hunter didn't have experience in teaching, and because his own growth was based on rigorous self-improvement. Naruto would find a reason to grow strong or he would perish. The sink-or-swim methodology worked for him, so there was no reason it wouldn't work for the blonde. His pupil rolled over and mumbled slightly in his sleep, bringing Kakuzu back to his original train of thought. The brat seemed to have an impressive healing ability that he hadn't known of before, and more importantly, that Kakuzu, with his decades of experience, had been ignorant of. He assumed that its hidden nature was because no one else had tried to kill Naruto previously, and so the ability had remained dormant until it was needed. It wouldn't be the first time such a requirement was needed for the activation of a Kekkai Genkai, though it didn't explain why the former Takinin had never heard of it beforehand. Still, the chakra that such a bloodline limit required had to be massive, which would explain the boy's larger-than-average capacity, especially for an untrained 5-year-old. There was also the way it felt, though evil-tainted. That chakra was more than just mere killing intent. Killing intent was based off of emotion either inadvertently leaked or intentionally used for intimidation purposes, and was typically dependent upon age and experience. But Naruto was too young to know that, nor did he really possess the capacity to utilize it, which meant that the nature of the chakra itself was evil. There were also those strange whisker-like markings on Naruto's cheeks, though that could simply be a physical manifestation of some family trait, similar to Konoha's Inuzuka clan. Still, Kakuzu wouldn't write off any potential explanations until he could definitely rule them out. He couldn't tell for sure what was different about Naruto, but there was something different. Until that time. "Get up, brat, time to start training." Naruto groaned but woke up nonetheless, groggily following Kakuzu outside the tent. What followed was Naruto's first of many rather brutal training sessions to prepare him physically for the life of a shinobi. Several hours later, Kakuzu made out the figure of Ryo approaching their training spot. The teacher carried a scroll under one arm and a backpack over the opposite shoulder. He stopped in front of the taller man, watching as Naruto finished a series of stretches and calisthenics that the bounty hunter had shown him. Kakuzu cleared his throat and Naruto looked up, face morphing into a confused expression as his gaze settled on Ryo. "Naruto," Kakuzu stated, voice brusque and businesslike, "this is Ryo. I have asked him to teach you how to read and write properly, as well as to make sure you learn math and whatever else he considers pertinent. You will show him respect while he is here, and you will pay close attention to what he has to teach you. While not directly related to being a shinobi, these subjects will affect your life and sharpen your mind. A good mind is a valuable tool. Finish up here while I have a word with your teacher." Kakuzu beckoned Ryo to follow him out of earshot. Once they were a safe distance away, he leaned down into Ryo's face and stared intently at the man, an intimidation tactic he'd learned worked wonderfully on civilians due to his unusual eyes. "I will be leaving on and off for missions during our stay here. While I am gone, I expect that you will house and guard Naruto with your life. Am I understood?" When Ryo nodded, Kakuzu dismissed him with a wave of his hand. "Good. Now your pupil is waiting. I have some business to take care of, but I will most likely be back tonight. He is under your jurisdiction until then." Then Kakuzu strode off, leaving a visibly shaken Ryo to walk over to Naruto and introduce himself. Spreading out the scroll he had with him, he began to tutor his newest student. A year passed without incident. Just as he'd said, Kakuzu disappeared rather frequently to hunt rogue ninja, partially for the money and partially to vent his frustration that it appeared he was getting soft. He would remind himself that the time, effort, and frustration was all for an ultimate purpose that would benefit him down the line, but it didn't change the fact that mentoring such a young, impressionable child was something he never even considered putting on his bucket list, especially since some of his expeditions were really just outings to make sure there were no shinobi targeting his young pupil. During these trips, Naruto would stay with Ryo, who despite his fear of Kakuzu, learned to like and enjoy Naruto's company, The boy listened to anything he taught with rapt attention, hanging off of every word. In addition to his daily workouts, which consisted mainly of running, stretching, and shadow fighting, Naruto was often tested by Kakuzu and Ryo on random subjects pertaining to anything and everything. Kakuzu realized rather quickly that Naruto was able to grasp general concepts pretty swiftly for someone his age, despite his previous learning handicap. And while Naruto would never be as smart as Kakuzu himself, the blonde was clever and cunning, able to pick out flaws and strategies and set up traps on a level that surprised the bounty hunter. With the right training and teachers, it looked as though Naruto could have been, or still could be, the prodigy of whatever clan or family he belonged to. The bounty hunter heavily suspected that part of Naruto's drive to learn came from a desire to try to impress him. Throughout their interactions, Kakuzu always remained aloof of any attachment for his pupil, and so he looked to the bounty hunter for approval. It was an awkward notion, probably because the former Takinin knew that it was how he had grown up, and the idea of an emotional connection with the blonde was distasteful, but he had to admit that it was an effective stratagem. Naruto was a tool, a means to an end, and despite his apparent potential, he had a long way to go before he became truly useful to Kakuzu. Perhaps it is time to start teaching him the basics of ninjutsu. It will take some time for him to master the art. I suppose I should start when I return to the village. Kakuzu was currently headed out on another hunt, traversing the border between the lands of grass and rain to head to the southern part of the land of earth. Rumors of a skilled missing nin from Kuzugakure, the village hidden in grass, had started floating around, and Kakuzu wanted to cash in on the new high bounty before someone else did. Oh, he seems to be on a mission. Do you think it's okay to distract him for a few moments? The tall ninja paused in his trek as something green melded from the ground not 20 feet in front of him. The green thing opened to reveal a man with short green hair and yellow eyes, body chromatically split in two, right side solid black, left side snowy white, and engulfed by what appeared to be a large Venus flytrap. Wrapped around his body was a full black cloak, much like his own, Kakuzu noted, decorated with red clouds. Kakuzu prepared himself for anything, unsure of how to react to this strange appearance by someone he didn't recognize from a bingo book. He would be hard-pressed to admit it, but anyone who could sneak up on him so unexpectedly, heedless of the fact that Kakuzu wasn't a censor type, was someone to be wary of. "Who are you?" he demanded. "What do you want?" "We are Zetsu," spoke a darker voice than the first, and Kakuzu blinked as he postulated that the different colors of Zetsu were probably separate personalities, "and we are here to make you an offer." He peered intently at the person calling themselves Zetsu. What technique was that? Your approach was undetectable. Even Mogirigaku no Jutsu is incapable of doing that. That was my, shut up, fool! Hissed the black side. Leader Sama said to tell him what he needs to know, not every detail. He does not need to know what our abilities are. Kakuzu stared, the mere act of watching two halves of the same person argue with himself allowing him to drop his guards slightly. It also did not appear as if this ninja was looking to fight him. He cleared his throat. "You mentioned an offer. I will hear you out." "Thanks, Kakuzu-san," chirped the white half. "Have you heard of a group known as Akatsuki?" "No." "A shame then, but to be expected." Kakuzu's eyes narrowed. That almost sounded like an insult, and he had a relatively low tolerance for people who pissed him off. Especially ones who had the capacity to sneak up on him. "What is Akatsuki?" "We are a group of S-class missing nin, much like you, working towards a united goal of world domination," Zetsu explained. The bounty hunter quirked an eyebrow. "And how exactly do you plan on accomplishing that?" "Have you heard of the Biju or the term Jinchuriki?" "I have heard stories of the Biju, chakra monsters of enormous power, and of Jinchuriki, human hosts with these creatures sealed inside of them, but my knowledge of them is limited beyond the fact that they supposedly exist. I admit that I do not find it overly pertinent to trifle with such matters myself." Kakuzu had a tendency to ignore the outside world when the people in it weren't mentioned in his bingo book, and the political implications of learning about Jinchuriki didn't appeal to him. He'd had enough of the double talk that pervaded most of the governments of the hidden villages to last a lifetime. He thought he heard Zetsu's black side scoff. Wanting to show him up, he continued, however, I have heard that my home village has a Jinchuriki within its possession, though I have not yet taken the time to confirm the veracity of this information. Interesting, Zetsu mused. We have not heard of Takigaku's creation of a Jinchuriki. That will need to be looked into. However, the other rumors you have heard are accurate. There are 9 Biju ranging from the Ichibi to the Kyubi, most of which are sealed into humans known as Jinchuriki. These humans are generally granted some form of power from their demon, have the capability to access the Biju's chakra, and can normally be identified by some physical trait of their Biju. It's Akatsuki's desire to capture and seal all the Biju in order to attain our goal. It seems unlikely that you would just choose S-class criminals at random to join your organization. What part would I play in this? He is much smarter than I gave him credit for, commented the black half to the white half. Yes, very, the white side responded. To Kakuzu, he said, Akatsuki requires a lot of funds in order to run properly. Since you're a bounty hunter, you would be really good at helping us out, plus any contacts you've gathered over the years. Also, whispers of your power abound if you know where to listen. Your ability to use multiple elements in conjunction with your analytical prowess would be a great asset in the capture of the Biju and success for Akatsuki's goal. It appeared to Kakuzu that Zetsu was done talking, and so the two stared at each, Kakuzu's gaze glassy as he thought over the proposition. Akatsuki's information network was interesting, to say the least. With how long it had been since his defection from the hidden waterfall, and his own covert activities, few people even knew he was still alive, so the fact that Zetsu had managed to discover his existence was impressive. His lack of knowledge with respect to Takigaku's Jinchuriki was a little surprising, especially since that seemed to be Akatsuki's target, but Kakuzu's former home was notorious for trying to hoard power in secret, and as a small nation, it was entirely feasible that it could be overlooked as a target. Disregarding the strange inconsistencies in Akatsuki's intelligence, Kakuzu had to admit that the offer was intriguing, almost tempting. A year ago, he would have had no reason to not accept the offer: world domination, a wide array of powerful allies with a common goal, not to mention the money he could get from the alliance. A vision of Naruto, the blonde-haired brat with strange abilities and great potential, appeared in his mind's eye. He refocused on Zetsu and calmly stated, tempting as it is, I will have to decline your offer. While I have no problem attempting to form a mutually beneficial relationship with Akatsuki, I am uninterested in membership at this time. Very well, muttered the black side. We will contact you at a later time to collect any relevant information. Perhaps then you will be interested in our offer. And how will I know who is Akatsuki? Zetsu's black side sneered. Anyone wearing this black cloak with red clouds is a member of Akatsuki, the dawning of a new age, red with blood. It's rather poetic, isn't it? Finished Zetsu's white half with a smile. With that, Zetsu melted back into the ground and Kakuzu was left to continue his journey with a multitude of new thoughts in mind, but one in particular. Biju and Jinchuriki HM? Interesting. Chapter 3 Bounty. Listen, brat, Kakuzu began one day during Naruto's morning exercises, you are old enough now, and Naruto inwardly wondered how many other people considered it old enough to start pulling your own weight. I am going to teach you how to engage in the world's oldest profession. Naruto raised a hand and opened his mouth to ask exactly what that was, but Kakuzu's glare silenced him. Killing. Naruto could tell from the manic glint in his teacher's eyes that he was grinning beneath the mask. He gulped slightly, the prospect of following in Kakuzu's footsteps a somewhat foreboding one. Kakuzu noticed the movement and reined in his bloodlust. Problem, brat? As a ninja, you will have to kill eventually. That goes double for Nuke-nin, who hunt and are hunted alike, and especially for bounty hunters. But Kakuzu, I'm only 8. Aren't I a little young to be doing this? Teacher stared at protege momentarily before deigning to respond. Naruto, began Kakuzu, voice deep and throaty. The blonde came to immediate attention, Kakuzu's use of his name a clear indication that this was a serious conversation. I have spent a lifetime engaged in this trade. Thus far, you have been exposed merely to the basics of the shinobi lifestyle. Now it is time to get serious. Your focus will largely be on elemental ninjutsu, and only when I deem you ready will I send you out. Naruto nodded in reluctant acceptance, observing the small twitch of the bridge of Kakuzu's nose that indicated he was smirking. Good. We shall begin with the basics of bounty hunting. The guidelines for hunting other ninja are really quite simple. There are basically no rules for how the deed is done, but you must return the whole body to whatever collection station you go to. Why? Asked Naruto, confusion painted across his face. I mean, can't you just cut off the head and bring that? That should be enough proof that you killed him, right? The bounty hunter nodded in agreement. For any other profession, that would be correct. However, most of the bounties are placed by a missing nin's home village in order to regain any secrets his body may contain. The secrets of Kekkai Genkai and clan techniques are a valuable commodity to most villages, and they require the body intact in order to properly dispose of any secrets it may contain. I think I get it, Naruto said slowly. Like if someone killed you, Taki would want your body whole in order to get that thread thingy back, right? Hey, what is that? And why did you leave anyway? Naruto watched a sliver of emotion pass over the visible features of Kakuzu's face before the bounty hunter turned around, arm extending out briefly before falling back to his side. We are done for now, Kakuzu bit out before stalking off, Naruto's gaze in the direction of the taller ninja's apparent frustration. The bark of the tree that had sustained Kakuzu's wrath was completely splintered. It began to creak before toppling over into its fellows. Naruto gulped. His teacher had done that damage with just his fist, and so fast that it had been all but a blur. He made a mental note to not bring up Kakuzu's past again, lest the tree simply be representative of Kakuzu's temper, and resolved himself to yet another day of solitary training. Naruto woke up early the next day and began his morning exercises, silently wondering where Kakuzu was. His teacher had not returned after leaving the training spot the previous day, and the blonde was silently worried that he pushed the taller man too far. Almost 2 hours later, Naruto paused as a shadow fell over him. He turned around to find Kakuzu standing behind him, looking none the worse for wear, although numerous splotches of blood covered Kakuzu's normally impeccable cloak and several pink spots decorated his white head covering. The blonde knew better than to ask, so he remained silent as the former Takinin stared down at him unflinchingly. Brat, Kakuzu finally greeted, his voice as level as it always seemed to be, what have you accomplished so far? Naruto grinned, the tension from the previous day dissipating. Just my morning exercises so far. You said we'd work on elemental ninjutsu training today, he reminded. Kakuzu grunted noncommittally in response, his gaze seeming dull with disinterest. Now your real training will begin, he said, ignoring the blonde's statement. Older and more experienced shinobi will not be taken down by your pathetic repertoire of techniques. If you recall, you have a futon affinity, meaning that you are more easily able to utilize wind chakra than the other natures, so we shall begin there. Naruto nodded quickly, his face a picture of excitement. Perhaps a demonstration. Kakuzu mentally concentrated on the futon chakra located within one of the masks on his back. He'd spent so many years honing his abilities that he didn't need to switch around his elemental affinities, but the power behind his techniques were always a little stronger when he did. Watch, he commanded. He went through several hand seals before intoning, futon, atsugai. A condensed sphere of wind formed in front of his mouth before he released it into the trees, allowing it to expand from its shape and shred everything in its path. The gales were so fierce that Naruto was forced to shield his eyes as they started tearing up. He squinted in the direction of the attack, and after a minute was finally able to lower his arm and gaze upon the destruction in a mixture of awe and fear. Trees were uprooted and torn asunder for up to 100 yards in a wide path about 50 yards across. Naruto gazed at Kakuzu with renewed respect. Are you gonna teach me that? The blonde hyped, slack-jawed. Kakuzu merely surveyed the damage with a neutral expression. Perhaps in the future, when I deem you ready, he answered finally. In the meantime, here, Kakuzu bent down and picked up a single leaf from the ground. Your main focus will be using your chakra to cut this leaf in 2 pieces. Naruto groaned as Kakuzu proceeded to slice the leaf neatly in half while it was held in the palm of his hand. He then gestured to the ground, indicating that Naruto should pick a leaf and begin, before turning around and walking away, leaving the blonde to stare despondently at the object in his hand. Sighing, Naruto covered one hand with the other and began to focus all of his attention on cutting the leaf as his teacher had just done. The bounty hunter observed from afar as Naruto struggled to have the leaf with just his chakra. He could sense the frustration within his apprentice, but instead of approaching and offering pointers, he merely smirked to himself, pleased with the direction the boy was moving towards. Over the course of the next year, Naruto slowly learned how to access and manipulate nature chakra. By about the 8-month mark, he could successfully split the leaf in half with minimal effort, and Kakuzu nodded his head in acknowledgement of this feat. Naruto grinned broadly in accomplishment. From that day forward, Kakuzu had begun to teach him some basic wind release techniques. After Naruto had split the leaf, Kakuzu had explained more thoroughly why he was able to. Wind chakra was quite malleable, capable of being shaped to be as sharp, thin, forceful, or blunt as the wielder desired. By applying his chakra to the leaf, Naruto was teaching himself how to use his elemental chakra alone to cut something. His training was fairly routine, involving calisthenics and perfecting any ninjutsu Kakuzu deemed him ready to learn. For months, the days bled together until one fateful morning, when Kakuzu woke him up and stated, "Come, brat, we are going on a trip." Naruto rose from bed groggily, asking, "Where are we going, Kakuzu-sensei?" Despite the fact that his teacher had specifically told him he only wanted to be called by his name, with no honorifics, Naruto had started slipping in the added tag as a way to test Kakuzu. The bounty hunter wasn't a great mentor, often disappearing for long stretches of time following blithe comments and vague instructions on how to perform some feat of shinobi prowess. Compared to Ryo, who sat with him and helped him through concepts and problems, Kakuzu's teaching abilities were lackluster. He could understand it during the first couple of years. His grounding needed work, and the abilities that he could hone were simple enough to do on his own that Kakuzu's presence wasn't needed, especially since he could always go to Ryo for extra knowledge. Now that he was a little older, with most of his foundation laid and the rest of his ninja career reliant upon a different foundation, Kakuzu's absence was quite noticeable. He'd once asked why the taller shinobi didn't stick around to help him learn the skills he gave the blonde glimpses of, and after a long silence, Kakuzu had answered, "Because the road to self-satisfaction is far more vindicating than the alternative." Naruto hadn't been satisfied with such a cryptic answer, but calls for his teacher to explain himself hadn't yielded any results, so he'd resorted to other methods, namely, trying to get Kakuzu to actually give him the time of day. The blonde suspected that, despite his appearance, the former Takinin was actually older than he appeared. The way he talked was a bit archaic, and he could recall Kakuzu expressing some disdain for things being old-fashioned, as if he'd lived during those times and moved past them. As a result, his dislike of honorifics probably stemmed from the fact that he didn't like being considered old, so Naruto had started using them as a way to irritate the man. The only downside was that Kakuzu always retaliated, and the bounty hunter didn't believe in restricting punishment. Still somewhat tired, Naruto wasn't able to dodge the fist aimed for his head. "What have I told you about honorifics?" Kakuzu growled. "As for your question, we are heading for the land of lightning. There are rumors of a rogue Kumonin around, and the best way to learn anything is by example. It is time to take you bounty hunting," he finished, and just by his tone of voice, Naruto knew he was smirking. It took 5 days for the duo to reach the border of the land of lightning. Naruto was a bit tired by the end of the journey. Kakuzu had kept them moving at a steady pace with minimal sleep, stating that it was best to get there early so no one else could take the bounty. "Stay watchful and be careful," Kakuzu cautioned his pupil. "This man is a jonin, and you are still learning simple moves." Naruto nodded in understanding. It took the better part of the day before the pair managed to find any sort of clue to the target's location, the embers of a hastily doused campfire. Kakuzu had them follow the trail for several hours before stopping for a short rest. After that, teacher and student began moving again, finding more signs of recent activity along the way, clues that indicated fear was driving the shinobi to be sloppy, according to Kakuzu. Naruto figured that his teacher took some sort of sadistic pleasure in knowing that. They ended up stumbling upon the renegade about mid-morning of the 6th day. He possessed unkempt crimson hair and narrow honey eyes, clothed in the standard jonin outfit of Kumogakure. He stood up as Kakuzu approached, taking a defensive stance. Who are you? He asked. Kakuzu released a mental sigh. Sometimes it got a little tiring being asked that question. It was fine to take credit where it was due, but with his focus shifted in several different directions since becoming Naruto's caretaker, bounty hunting had become more of a method of stress relief than recreational activity. And now he often preferred just fighting to the verbal boasting he had employed in the past. Instead of replying, he went through the appropriate seals and muttered, "Futon, Atsugai." The nuke Nin dodged the condensed sphere of wind that was formed, but Kakuzu kept up the assault. He could apparently control whether or not the wind expanded into the torrential gusts Naruto had been witness to after it was launched. The blonde observed the battle from afar, awed by Kakuzu's talent. His teacher stuck with using wind element tactics throughout the battle, for both Naruto's sake and the fact that, as he'd explained during the journey, his opponent had a lightning affinity. Moving in close, he engaged in a short-lived, brutal taijutsu match with the missing Nin, before using a futon technique Naruto had not yet been taught to slice neatly into the Kumonin's body, which immediately crumpled to the ground. Kakuzu motioned for Naruto to move closer. A bright slash of red stained his dark cloak. "You need to get used to and accept the sight of the dead," he stated dispassionately. Naruto did as he bade and simply stared at the body, waiting for some sort of emotion but feeling nothing. The Kumonin didn't mean anything to him except as a means to make a living, and he realized suddenly that this was Kakuzu's intent all along, to both desensitize him to the death of other ninja and to show him why it was necessary. He admired Kakuzu's handiwork for another minute before looking up at the taller ninja, waiting for further instructions. "Good," Kakuzu said, "now come. We have a long trek ahead of us." Grabbing the dead renegade and slinging him over his back, the former Takinin started to walk, his apprentice following not far behind. 10-year-old Naruto leapt from treetop to treetop in an attempt to catch his quarry. The year following Kakuzu's brutal capture of the former Kumonin, Naruto had been even more devoted to training than he had previously. It had taken a year, mostly because Kakuzu had continued to disappear for long periods of time, and Naruto wasn't supposed to leave without the man's say-so, until the bounty hunter had deemed his pupil ready for his first mission. It had started a week ago, when Kakuzu had walked into the tent and kicked Naruto awake. "It is time," Kakuzu growled. By the time Naruto's eyes were open, the taller man had already departed their living quarters, leaving the blonde to dress quickly and follow his mentor out. "Time for what?" he asked, confused. Kakuzu turned to look at him. "Your initiation," responded the mercenary. "Your skills should be sufficient to hunt a low-level chunin, so we shall test you." He pulled out a photograph and held it up so that Naruto could see it. The man in the photo had short brown hair and luminescent golden irises. A forehead protector emblazoned with the mark of the hidden grass village kept back his longer bangs. "This is Takashi," Kakuzu continued. "He was a contact of mine within Kusugakure, but was recently kicked out for siphoning funds from the government. A man after my own hearts." If Naruto didn't know any better, he would have thought Kakuzu regarded the man with some fondness. "His usefulness to me has become non-existent due to this, and your mission is to kill him and bring his body back to me. As he is only a chunin with basic skills, his capture should be easy, but do not be stupid. Here is a scroll for you to bring the body back in," he added, tossing the blonde said object. Naruto caught the scroll, followed by the second one Kakuzu threw immediately after. "What's this one?" "Open it," Kakuzu replied gruffly. Naruto unfurled the scroll and set it on the ground, placing his palm upon it and applying chakra. There was a brief poof, and the blonde waited for the small cloud of smoke to disperse before looking at the contents: a pair of black cargo pants, a long-sleeved charcoal gray shirt, and a dark blue vest with multiple pockets. "For all intents and purposes, you are now a genin," Kakuzu explained. "As such, you will wear appropriate shinobi attire and carry equipment with you at all times." When Naruto looked up with the beginning of tears in his eyes, Kakuzu turned away. "Get rid of those tears, brat. I did it for my reputation as well as yours, not because I care. Now get changed and leave before your sentimentality gets you killed." Naruto had changed and quickly left after that remark. He doubted that Kakuzu would carry through with his threat, considering how often his teacher made it, and especially since it seemed like he couldn't really die thanks to his supposed Kekii Genkai, but there was no point in pissing him off when he seemed to be in a relatively giving mood. Unfortunately, the mission had so far gone not nearly as smoothly as Naruto had hoped. The minute he had come within a half-mile of his quarry on the border of the lands of grass and earth, Kakashi had quickly fled, moving west towards the land of birds. That had been almost 3 days ago. Predator and prey had steadily passed through the land of birds and into another small nation. All the while, Naruto had been triggering Kakashi's traps, tripwires, and exploding tags. The blonde was merely thankful for his amazing stamina. Constant movement and chakra expenditure for several days was no mean feat, and he was sure Kakashi was using soldier pills to stagger on. The chase couldn't last much longer. After another 20 minutes of tree jumping, Naruto landed in an open field, a huge, foreboding castle erected before him. Looking around but seeing no one, he decided to approach the building. He opened the giant front doors and stepped through, taking a moment to allow his eyes to adjust to the gloom. Behind him, the door swung closed with an ominous sound, and immediately after turning to look at it, Naruto ducked to avoid the shuriken that were thrown at him from the darkness. They embedded themselves in the solid wood of the door, and Naruto inspected them briefly before muttering dryly, "Well, I guess he's here." "W, who are you? And W, what do you want W with me?" stammered a terrified voice from the dark. "I am," began Naruto, "your executioner." He paused briefly, a bright smile lighting up his face. "I've wanted to say that for so long." Kakuzu always had a strange way of intimidating people just by speaking his name, though the blonde supposed that his physical presence and deep voice helped with that. A kid's appearance and voice would only get him so far. "You sound like a kid," came the voice again, this time closer and more confident. Naruto looked up and saw Kakashi on the second floor, leaning over the railing. His brown hair was unkempt and dirty, and his golden eyes glinted strangely from within sunken skin. "You are just a kid!" he exclaimed. Then he began laughing. "They sent a kid to take me out? Oh, that's rich!" He was stopped abruptly as a shuriken made a small cut on his cheek. "Next one won't miss," Naruto promised. "Kakuzu wanted you taken out, and I'm gonna do it." Kakashi suddenly grew serious. "Kakuzu? And he sent you after me?" "He's severely underestimating me," he finished with a laugh. The rogue Kusanine then leapt from the balcony straight towards Naruto, kunai in hand. Naruto reached into one of his pockets and pulled out several shuriken. He threw them deftly with his right hand before performing hand seals. "Futon Repusho," he muttered. Holding out both hands, palms forward, a gust of wind rushed from them, propelling the shuriken forward at a much faster velocity. Kakashi angled his neck slightly, letting the shuriken pass right by him. "Ha! Is that all you've got, kid? You'll need more than that to defeat me?" A spurt of blood erupted from his neck, and the missing nin dropped to the floor, hand clasped to the wound. "What, you?" he gurgled. Naruto walked up to him, making sure to stay far enough away that he wouldn't be caught off guard by any tricks. He held up his right hand, the one that had grabbed the shuriken. Attached to 3 of his fingers were thin, nearly invisible strands of ninja wire. "These were attached to the shuriken I threw at you. Ninja wire's pretty good at conducting chakra, so I channeled my wind chakra through the wires into the shuriken. Even though you dodged the actual weapon, the wind meant that you weren't getting away from me," he explained. The blonde watched as Kakashi struggled to say something and failed, the light fading from his eyes. That was kinda lucky, wasn't even sure that'd work. And a nice catch with the jugular, he congratulated himself. Kakuzu had told him that his size and age would make others underestimate him initially, and taking advantage of that moment was key. As much as he hated to admit it, his teacher had been right. He removed the scroll Kakuzu had given him from his back and opened it on the floor. "Time to seal you and get out of here." "Devour." "Eh?" The 10-year-old turned around, confused. Then the tongues erupted from everywhere. Naruto had to backflip quickly to avoid being hit by one of the tongues. Another one tried to hit him, forcing him to duck quickly. A third tongue scooped up Takashi's corpse and disappeared through an open doorway. "Hey!" Naruto protested indignantly. "He's mine! The distraction cost him. One tongue flailed wildly and caught the boy a hard blow upside the head, knocking him out. It rolled Naruto in its grasp and disappeared from where it came, along with all the others. The room was left empty and silent, a splatter of blood on the floor the only sign of any disturbance. Devour. Naruto blearily opened his eyes, grasping his head with both hands as a searing pain rent through his skull. What hit me? Sitting up slowly, he looked around to take stock of his situation. He appeared to be in some sort of fleshy hallway that extended in both directions endlessly. The only things he appeared to be missing were the ceiling scroll and... Crap. Now I have to find that stupid body. He looked left and right, opting to go left. Hope I chose the right way, he grumbled, setting off on the path. It took half an hour of wandering down the hallway, but he finally came across Takashi's corpse, nestled in a small crook of the fleshy wall. Finally, he sighed. Naruto walked up to the wall and took out a kunai, digging into the material binding his bounty. Devour. The blonde turned around at that voice, wary. Last time, tongues had shot out of the walls, he wasn't taking any chances. A pale green mist began to emanate from the wall behind him, and Naruto, curious, threw his kunai at it. It promptly melted, causing Naruto to blanch. Acid? Oh, come on! He brought out another kunai and applied wind chakra, lengthening it and sharpening the blade. Cutting swiftly through the fleshy wall freed his bounty, causing Takashi's dead weight to fall completely upon him. He shoved it off and chanced to glance behind him, noting the acid hovering mere feet away. Panicked, the blonde clasped his hands together and threw them both out perpendicularly from his body, shouting, Futon, Repusho! The acid was blown away a fair distance due to the amount of chakra thrown into the technique, but began advancing quickly again. Plan B, Naruto thought. Tiger, ox, dog, rabbit, snake. Futon de Tapa. He yelled, this time pointing his hands up at the ceiling. A large blast of wind, sharper, denser, and stronger than the violent wind palm, flew from them, hitting the ceiling and cutting a circular tunnel out. Naruto immediately picked up Takashi bridal style and jumped, arriving on the first floor of the castle before the hole slowly knit closed behind him. Naruto panted in a mixture of fear and exhaustion, quickly locating the scroll he had left behind earlier and sealing the Kusanin's body into it. He picked up the scroll in time to observe a man walk out from one of the doorways leading to another room. He wore dark pants, a light gray, long-sleeved shirt with a red breastplate over it and green shoulder guards, as well as a tall blue helmet that was strapped under his chin. What the? Naruto began as the man walked past him. The man was suddenly surrounded by an ethereal blue glow, and Naruto fell silent as he walked slowly up the stairs. Entranced, the blonde slipped the scroll containing Takashi's body into a holder on his back and followed the other man upstairs. After several flights of stairs, Naruto arrived at what he surmised to be one of the castle's many towers. He blinked rapidly and looked around, realizing the man was no longer in front of him. Well, time to go, he started right before his blue eyes spied something on the other side of the room. What's that? On an altar was placed a scroll that looked worn with age, which Naruto promptly unrolled. Across the top and bottom was an artistic border of some type of lizard, though what kind Naruto couldn't specify. The middle portion contained names and the fingerprints of people imprinted in dried blood. He stared at the scroll blankly until something Kakuzu had once told him caused a wide grin to split his face. Some shinobi have the ability to summon animals to assist them in a fight, Kakuzu lectured. These shinobi are typically part of a clan who has a contract that it passes down through the generations, and when its members are old enough, they are allowed to sign the contract and summon the animals in a method comparable to summoning weapons from a scroll. Konoha Sannin, Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru are perhaps some of the most notable possessors of summoning contracts in recent times, able to call upon the toads, slugs, and snakes, respectively. That said, summoning contracts are rather rare, so I do not expect you to have to deal with them often, if at all, but you should be aware of their existence. Kakuzu had never mentioned summoning again because they had never had a situation arise where they needed to talk about it. But even from his teacher's vague description, it was entirely possible that the scroll before him was a summoning contract. devour. With that word, acid began to seep from the walls into the small room. Naruto didn't even think. Copying the example of the people before him, he quickly bit his index finger hard enough to draw blood and wrote his name in the next blank spot on the paper, following it up by biting the rest of the digits on his right hand and pressing the entire appendage to the page. "Stop!" he shouted, eyes tightly closed. It took but a second for the acid mist to stop advancing and slowly begin to dissipate. 10 seconds later, the room was clear. Naruto opened his eyes. Good, he said, surprised. "Now, go away." There was a small delay, followed by a rather loud pop and a cloud of smoke, leaving Naruto suspended hundreds of feet in the air, scroll in front of him. "Oh!" he screamed, body plummeting towards the ground. "Futon, Repusho!" he shouted, aiming his hands at the ground. The violent wind palms slowed his descent enough that he released the technique 10 feet above the ground, landing nimbly in a crouch. He plopped to the ground with a sigh, summoning scroll in front of him. Naruto exhaled heavily, the recent slew of events catching up to him. "What a day," he muttered. He stood up and picked up the contract, tying both ends to a piece of rope he had on him. He then slung the scroll over his back, where it knocked against the one containing Takashi's body. "Wait till Kakuzu sees this haul." The blonde walked toward the tree line at a sedate pace. Upon reaching it, he jumped for a low branch and disappeared into the foliage, leaving the land of Nek far behind. It took over a week to return to Onanji, the blonde moving unhurriedly after his harrowing adventure. When Naruto found Kakuzu meditating at their usual spot in the late morning, the bounty hunter appeared severely disgruntled. "You were gone longer than I anticipated," Kakuzu noted with practiced blandness, opening first one eye, then the other. Naruto reached back and rubbed the back of his head embarrassedly. "Ahihi, Takashi led me on quite a chase, and his hide-and spot proved to be really dangerous. Here's his body," he added, removing the scroll with the kusanine sealed inside. "Good," Kakuzu stated, climbing to his feet and taking the scroll from his pupil. "That is one less headache I must deal with." Then his eyes caught sight of the other object strapped to Naruto's back. "Why do you have an extra scroll?" Naruto tried to fight back a wide grin but failed. "Oh, this?" he asked coyly. "Just something I picked up on the trip. I was hoping you'd be able to explain it more clearly." Kakuzu quirked an eyebrow as his apprentice removed the scroll from his back and laid it on the ground, unrolling it slowly. His eyes widened slightly when he saw what it was, but he quickly schooled his features back into a neutral expression. "It appears that you have stumbled across the long-lost chameleon summoning contract of the Kubasaki clan." The blond boy bounced excitedly on his heels. "It really is a summoning contract. I found it in an old castle that tried to eat me after chasing Takashi for 3 days," he told his teacher. Kakuzu digested this information and then nodded. "Takashi must have led you into the land of Nek. 50 years ago, the Kubasaki clan, who ruled that area, was deeply embroiled in war. Outnumbered, the remaining Kubasaki members were forced to retreat into their castle. It was rumored that Kubasaki Koza, the clan head notorious for his chameleon-like techniques, summoned a giant beast before his death and told it to destroy anyone that dared enter his domain. The aggressors were never heard from again, though the Kubasaki clan has also never been heard from either." "Well, that explains the repetitive devour I kept hearing," Naruto mumbled. "So how does this thing work?" he asked aloud. "I signed it 'cause I was in a bit of a bind, but I don't really know how to use it. Can you teach me?" The bounty hunter snorted. "There is little I do not know. As I told you before, summoners have a blood link with a specific animal that they can call upon to aid in battle. The amount of shinobi who use summons are small, though, as many of the more useful ones require vast amounts of chakra. Not that that is a problem for you," Kakuzu added dryly. "The hand seals for the Kuchios no Jutsu are boar, dog, bird, monkey, and ram. It is a requirement to make a blood offering when performing the technique, so most shinobi tend to bite their thumb before they perform the signs. Then you just need to place your palm on a solid surface and call the summon you want." When Kakuzu didn't continue, Naruto asked, "Is that it?" Kakuzu shot him an annoyed look. "Would I not tell you if there was more? Now you just need to practice." Naruto didn't bother saying it would be just like his teacher to withhold information, instead biting his thumb hard enough to break skin and performing the required seals. Kuchiyos no jutsu! He yelled, slamming his palm to the ground. The inky whorls of a seal spread out from his palm, and a poof of smoke accompanied it before a tiny chameleon, no longer than Naruto's finger, appeared. Naruto stared at it blankly while Kakuzu fought down an uncharacteristic bark of laughter. You obviously need more practice, Kakuzu said as the lizard disappeared in another poof of smoke. I shall return later. Dusk had fallen by the time Naruto made any headway on the new technique. As sweat dripped down his face, Naruto performed the seals once more and panted, Kuchiyos no jutsu. When the smoke cleared, a small chameleon, roughly the size of Naruto's forearm, stood in front of him on all fours. He was a bright green color, a few white spots sprinkled over his body, and a cylindrical brown container strapped to his back under his belly. His tongue flicked out experimentally, his left eye focusing on Kakuzu, who stood a short distance away, while his right eye stared at Naruto. What is it? He demanded haughtily, voice shrill with youth. For his part, Naruto stood there, completely flabbergasted. Finally he gasped, I did it! He laughed heartily before blinking stupidly. Wait, did you talk? The lizard scoffed at him, focusing his left eye on Naruto as well. Course I can talk. Name's Kamasada. He eyed Naruto carefully, and the blonde repressed a shudder as both eyes went in different directions. What do you want? He repeated. Kakuzu chose that moment to step in. Kamasada, informed the one in charge that we would like to speak to him. Kamasada's left eye swiveled back to Kakuzu and appraised him quietly. Fine, he agreed finally. I'll let Aji-san know he's wanted. Didn't even get a long time back, he grumbled. With that, he disappeared in a puff of smoke. Naruto, Kakuzu began, this will require a lot of chakra. You will need to gather as much as you can, more than you think yourself capable of, and push it all into the technique. But first, follow me. Kakuzu took off into the woods, Naruto following until the bounty hunter stopped in a clearing Naruto identified as the place where the wind release, pressure damage technique had been demonstrated 2 years prior. We are far enough from the village and it is dark enough that there should not be too much of a disturbance. Naruto nodded in compliance, and closed his eyes to collect what little chakra he had remaining. More, he thought, still more. Deep within Naruto's mindscape, an eye pupil slit and red, the size of a grown man, opened. The creature to which it belonged released a deep chuckle. You need chakra, child? Very well, I shall comply, for now. But this is merely the beginning. The eye closed again, but a foul orange-red chakra emanated from the creature and disappeared into the mindscape. Naruto was already partway through the hand seals when he became shrouded in an orange-red cloak of chakra. Kakuzu's eyes narrowed slightly, but he did nothing but observe as Naruto slammed his palm on the ground and roared, Kuchiyos no jutsu. A whirlwind of wind and smoke exploded from under where Naruto stood, and when it cleared, he was standing 100 feet off the ground. The creature Naruto had summoned was massive, easily as tall as the castle Naruto had been in earlier, and several times as long, including its curled tail. Its skin was a mottled green, each foot possessing wickedly sharp claws. The head was decorated with 3 horns, 2 smaller ones, 20 feet long, between its eyes, and a 40-foot one protruding from its snout. Koza? Asked the chameleon, voice coarse like sandpaper and distinctly masculine. His eyes swiveled all around, finally focusing upwards, where Naruto stood in the middle of the triangle of horns. No, you're not even a Kubasaki. Who are you, boy? Naruto gulped but managed to eke out, my name's Uzumaki Naruto, and I'm the newest summoner, I guess. The chameleon grumbled. Kamasada could have at least mentioned that. I am Shiromori, the leader of the chameleons of the Bankaku forest. For what reason have you summoned me, Uzumaki Naruto? The blonde looked at Kakuzu helplessly, who sighed in defeat. I asked that you be summoned, Shiromori-sama, the mercenary stated with a slight inclination of his head. Propriety dictates that the boy should take time to become properly acquainted with the leader of his new potential partners. Shiromori watched Kakuzu with one eye and kept the other on Naruto. After a long moment, which included Kakuzu standing completely stationary and Naruto fidgeting restlessly, the chameleon grunted. Since you have the contract, I presume that it was you who saved me from that wretched existence Koza trapped me in. For that I am grateful. My family and myself owe you a great debt, Uzumaki Naruto. We are humbly at your service. Really? Cool. The chameleon boss eyed him for a moment. Yes, well then. If you don't mind, I'd like to see my family. Lots of catching up to do, you understand. Do not hesitate to call if you need assistance, Uzumaki Naruto. We of the chameleon tribe will respond. Then Shiromari disappeared in the same poof of smoke and whirling wind he had appeared in, and Naruto fell to the ground. Kakuzu caught him just before he impacted. Do not say that I have never done anything for you, Uzumaki Naruto, he groused, the subject of his ire resting sleepily against his back. Accursed brat causes too much fucking trouble. Naruto floated on the border between consciousness and sleep, the week's events finally catching up to his 10-year-old body. As darkness overtook his vision, the blonde had one last thought. Chapter 4, History. You need chakra, child? Very well, I shall comply, for now. But this is merely the beginning. The statement seemed to echo in Naruto's dream, chilling him down to his very core. It had repeated every so often, like a haunting memory that Naruto couldn't quite place but knew he had heard before, the voice familiar, and yet not at the same time. There was something about the voice that bothered him, but the 10-year-old couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was, just that it seemed to radiate hatred and evil. Damnable seal. You're lucky I can't take control right now. Naruto looked around in search of the owner of the voice, but all he saw was an unending darkness. The last thing he could remember was talking to Shiromari. The giant chameleon had told Naruto to call upon him in a time of need, and then, nothing. I must have passed out, Naruto deduced. But that doesn't explain what's going on here. The blonde noticed that his dream appeared to lighten, casting just enough light to illuminate where he was. He seemed to be standing in several inches of water in what, his nose told him, must have been a sewer. A massive wrought iron gate stood in front of him, and Naruto took a small step forward in order to better make out the word seal inscribed on a piece of paper far above him. He looked around, but after noting nothing else, turned his attention back to the gate. Suddenly, two blood-red eyes opened wide, accompanied by the wide, feral maw of some beast behind the gate. "Let me out!" roared the creature, leaking out enough killer intent to make Naruto scream. H! Naruto shot up, instinctively grabbing for the kunai he normally kept by his bedroll and bringing it defensively to his chest. Kakuzu chose that moment to stroll in through the door. The door? Naruto wondered absently, and loomed ominously over the bed. You look rather stupid in that position with nothing in your hand, he commented idly. Naruto realized that the kunai he had attempted to grab was nothing but air, and so he lowered his arm and sat up further in the bed, a real bed. He grasped the blanket in one hand, running his hand over the soft padding of the mattress underneath as if to confirm that it was real. Where are we? Naruto asked. That is unimportant. Tell me what happened. It is important, Naruto insisted. And I could ask you the same thing, what happened? The two made eye contact for a solid minute before Kakuzu made a breathy sound that Naruto took to be a sigh of resigned frustration. I rented a room for a night so you could recover. You exhausted your chakra practicing Kuchiyos no Jutsu yesterday, especially by summoning the chameleon boss. You have been asleep for almost a day. Now, what happened? He demanded. The blonde was quiet as he collected his thoughts. I want a sword, he said with finality, ignoring his teacher's question. There is no basis for you needing a sword, nor a reason for bringing it up, Kakuzu replied curtly. But think about it. How kick-ass would I be if I had a sword? He rambled. I could. Your non-sequitur bores me and evades my question, interrupted the older ninja. Tell me what happened. Naruto thought about lying to avoid the subject, but then decided against it. Kakuzu could be rather intimidating when he chose to be, and his ire seemed to be rising, a sure sign that screwing around with him was a bad idea. When I summoned Shiromari-sama, he began slowly, I thought I heard a voice in my head. It said something about me needing chakra, and that it would comply for now. Then, Naruto shrugged, I was able to summon Shiromori-sama. Kakuzu began moving steadily around the room, a movement that Naruto would have described as pacing if it weren't for the fact that Kakuzu never paced. He seemed to be muttering something to himself, and Naruto caught the words seal, chakra, and finally Kyubi. His eyes became wide as saucers on the last word. Wait, what? When is your birthday? Kakuzu demanded seriously. October 10th, he replied. Why? And what about the Kyubi? Isn't it dead? So, it is as I suspected, Kakuzu muttered. You are from Konoha, he stated coldly. Naruto gulped at how tense the room seemed to get at those words. The blonde shook his head nervously, suddenly aware that admitting such a fact was probably not the best idea. And no, I'm not. Your birthday coincides with the date that the Kyubi attacked Konoha. So? What does that have to do with anything? Kakuzu shot him a glance. You are the Jinchuriki of the legendary Kyubi no Yoko. Naruto was stunned. What? No, the fourth Hokage killed it. The blonde was interrupted by Kakuzu's throaty laugh. His teacher chuckled for a bit before settling himself imposingly in front of Naruto's bed. I have been in contact with a representative of several persons who have a vested interest in the Biju, Kakuzu began with an imperial air. As a result, I have become acquainted with a good degree of knowledge about them. First of all, you have a massive chakra supply, one that will most likely surpass my own once you reach your fullest potential. Secondly, those whisker-like markings on your cheeks are a trait of the Kyubi within you, which most Jinchuriki possess. And I have already explained the third part. You are from Konoha and share a birthday with the anniversary of the Kyubi's so-called death. Incidentally, the Biju are unable to be killed. He paused briefly before concluding, I believe that should be enough evidence to satisfy you. The younger ninja remained silent for a moment, absorbing the information. Finally, so, the voice in my head. Is the Kyubi attempting to make contact with you? Kakuzu confirmed. What else? He asked quietly. What else do you know about the Biju, or these Jinchuriki, Kakuzu supplied, are the human hosts who have a Biju sealed inside of them. He reached into one of his sleeves and rummaged around, pulling out a photograph and holding it up for Naruto to see. The girl depicted had mint green hair and pupilless orange eyes, and wore tattered street clothing that covered bronze skin. This is Fu, the host of the Nanabai no Kabutamushi from Takigakure. One of my contacts took this picture and passed it along to me. Naruto carefully took the picture from Kakuzu, staring at it intently. After a minute, he folded it carefully and set it on the dresser next to the bed. Teacher and student were silent until the blonde could no longer bear it. Do you hate me? He asked carefully, avoiding eye contact. Should I? Everyone else did, mumbled the blonde. I presume that you are referring to the people of Konoha. Naruto nodded, prompting Kakuzu to continue. From what I have heard, Jinchuriki are often hated and or feared by the people of their country because they are often reminded of the demon within and of nothing else. Having been unaffected by the Kyubi's attack, I have no reason to scorn you. You have proven yourself to be a valuable commodity, and I see no reason currently to discontinue our arrangement. After a brief pause, Kakuzu inquired, I can only assume that is the reason you left Konoha? Yeah, Naruto replied. Everyone there hated me. I thought it was because my family did something and then were killed. But now, Naruto's fist clenched the blanket in anger, I find out it was because of the Kyubi, this monster that lives inside of me. I was protecting them from it, he insisted. Kakuzu nodded. You will discover that the stupidity of people knows no bounds. Your good deeds will often go unnoticed and indeed be scorned, even if it is undeserved. Angry at having discovered the real reason behind his isolation in Konoha, Naruto wasn't quite thinking very clearly when he scoffed, What do you know about scorn? The statement was like a catalyst. Naruto choked as Kakuzu's hand shot out and latched around his throat, gripping tightly before slowly retracting towards the bounty hunter. Kakuzu brought Naruto up to his face, strange green eyes as hard as diamonds and staring into Naruto's scared blue orbs. Do not, he began, speaking low and slow, pretend to understand what I have been through. I know more of scorn than you ever will, he continued in a dangerous tone, so do not think that your status as a Jinchuriki makes you special. Naruto's hands scrambled frantically for purchase on Kakuzu's much larger one, his face starting to turn blue from lack of oxygen. After another few seconds of letting the blonde try to pry his hand free, Kakuzu relaxed his grip, allowing his student to collapse to the floor and gulp in great mouthfuls of much-needed air. You have learned your lesson? Kakuzu stated coolly. Naruto could only nod, not quite ready to use his voice yet. The mercenary waited another couple of minutes before saying in a voice that left no room for argument, "Tell me of your past." The blonde jerked in surprise before staring at his teacher with wide eyes. "Do not assume I care for your background," Kakuzu told him in the same cold tone. "I am merely curious." "I don't really remember much," Naruto admitted quietly. "There was an orphanage that I stayed at, but I was always ignored by the people in charge, and the other kids never really hung out with me. I remember a lot of hatred," he reminisced softly, "but I could never figure out why. I snuck into the library when I could to try and teach myself to read and write, and sometimes to figure out why everybody hated me, but I didn't get far and couldn't find anything. The shopkeepers always glared at me and chased me out, and most of the ninja ignored me. I remember deciding that my family must have done something really bad, gotten removed from all the books, and that I was the only one left. That's when I left, and met you." Naruto lapsed into silence after his tale, and Kakuzu seemed to stare right through him as he digested the boy's story. At length, the bounty hunter said Naruto's name. The Jinchuriki looked up at his mentor, reading nothing on Kakuzu's face. "You remind me of me," he said finally. Naruto inhaled sharply at this. "What?" "When I was an elite jonin," Kakuzu began, "the elders of Takigakure assigned me a special mission. I was told to kill the Shodai Hokage." Naruto's wide blue eyes grew larger at this pronouncement. "What?" "You heard me," Kakuzu said. "Now be quiet, brat." Naruto fell silent at this demand, and his teacher took a moment to recompose himself before continuing. "I snuck into the village proper and attempted to assassinate him, but I failed. I led him on a chase to the location known now as the Valley of the End. We clashed there, just the two of us, but despite my prowess in Suiton techniques, intelligence, and relatively large chakra reserves, I was soundly defeated by Senju Hashirama and his powerful Mokuton techniques. A unique Kekkai Genkai that allowed him to manipulate wood," he clarified, seeing Naruto about to ask. "It made him the most powerful and feared shinobi of the day. I returned to my village after attempting to complete this impossible task, and what was I greeted with?" Naruto remained silent, sure that this was a rhetorical question. He was proven right a moment later when Kakuzu roared, "Scorn!" his ire raised by the reminder of his past. Threads erupted from his body in a display of his brief lapse in control before he calmed down, returning to the stiff, rigid man Naruto normally saw him as. "My village believed that I did not try hard enough and punished me for failing in my objective. For years I had served that village faithfully and with complete dedication, taking any task that was asked of me. This blatant disrespect for all of my servitude infuriated and offended me, so I left. But I did not go without prizes," he added with an unseen malevolent grin. Kakuzu held out his right arm, pulling back the sleeve to reveal dark flesh embroidered with sutures. Something wriggled underneath his skin like live snakes before popping out of a large stitch on his forearm, revealing themselves to be black threads. "I stole Takigakure's most precious treasures, the Kinjutsu Jiangu, and the hearts of the village elders, who did not appreciate my service to their precious village," he hissed sadistically. "This," he concluded, pointing at the slash across his waterfall forehead protector, "was the final separation between me and my village. That is when my current life truly began." His narrative finished, Kakuzu waited for Naruto to digest the tale before speaking again. "Naruto," he stated, "do you understand why our histories are comparable?" The blonde nodded slowly, prompting taller shinobi to continue. "It is up to you what you will do now." "What do you mean?" "We have been associated for 5 years now. Now that you know my history, what will you do with that knowledge? Will you return to your village, or any village, and attempt to capitalize on this information, or will you stay here with me?" I'm stayin', Naruto told him firmly. I'm not afraid of your threats. You're the first person to ever take the time to teach me anything, sometimes, and I still have a lot more to learn. Besides, he added darkly, if Konoha didn't want me, then I don't want it. I want to show everyone there that they should be afraid of me. Kakuzu remained silent as a slow smirk stretched across his mouth. It was fortunate that the blonde had chosen to stay, because the alternative would have resulted in his pupil's death, Jinchuriki or no. He couldn't have anyone going around spilling his secrets, after all, and the boy's body would fetch a high price if his death was necessary. He will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. How amusing. Then it is time to create another link between us. Come here. Naruto stepped forward as the bounty hunter remained stationary. After several seconds of doing nothing, the blonde noticed a large bulge moving from Kakuzu's upper arm to his forearm, finally reaching the stitch in his forearm before slowly being expelled by several black threads. Kakuzu grabbed the object with his left hand, pulling it out and revealing it to be a small scroll. The tall man bent down and placed it on the floor, unraveling it to reveal an older parchment with a black ring inscribed in the center. Do you trust me? Kakuzu asked. Yeah. Kakuzu nodded. Simply place your palm within the circle, he ordered. The 10-year-old gulped nervously, but nodded in understanding. He knelt down to place his right hand directly within the black ring. It glowed blue momentarily, and the kanji for Jiangu appeared in it as Kakuzu took several large steps backwards. That was when a veritable mass of black threads erupted from the black ring in between his fingers, shooting upwards in a seemingly endless stream. They seemed to hit a peak, stopping in midair only to angle downwards with Naruto as the focal point. The blonde almost stepped backwards, but Kakuzu's commanding bark of "Stay still" stopped him. The next thing Naruto knew, someone was screaming. It took a moment to realize that it was him screaming, the sound continuous and racked with pain. The threads were burying into his body, completely bypassing his clothing and tearing into every inch of skin available below the neck. The entire process only took a minute, but to Naruto it seemed to last an eternity. When it was over, he laid in a ball on the ground, body spasming and voice hoarse from screaming. Kakuzu stepped forward and rolled the scroll back up, allowing the threads within his body to wrap around it and pull it back into hiding. I would have warned you, but I believe that experience is the hallmark of learning, Kakuzu announced from above him, and Naruto could practically hear the sadistic glee dripping from the bounty hunter's voice. Kakuzu bent down and lifted Naruto's left arm, pulling back the sleeve of the gray shirt he wore to reveal a thick black band inked into the boy's skin, halfway between the wrist and elbow of each arm. This is the sign that you now possess Jiangu, Kakuzu declared. This is Takigaku's most precious technique, greater than even the fabled hero's water of old, and you are now the second person to be granted its power. You have a year to gain control of it, and I will not train you how to use it. Like me, you will struggle to understand its power, but I believe that you have the potential to utilize it successfully. If you cannot use it by the end of a year, I will strip it from you, a process which may kill you. Take the time to recover while you can. I have to meet with someone. With that, he left the room. The mercenary wandered past his and Naruto's normal training grounds, entering the forest and walking to where Shiromari had been summoned the previous day. Upon reaching the spot, he held his arm out, allowing one thread to wriggle free from his body and deposit something into his hand. He stared at the object, a tiny black seed, for a moment before channeling his chakra into it and letting it fall to the ground. It only took 15 seconds to get the response he was waiting for. "What do you want?" spoke the dark voice of Zetsu from behind him. Kakuzu turned around slowly, no longer surprised at Zetsu's strange ability to merge with and meld out of anything and everything. "You told me I could contact you when I deemed it necessary by pushing my chakra into this seed," Kakuzu intoned. "I am slightly surprised to find that it worked," he added as an afterthought. Zetsu snorted. "You still doubt my abilities, after all this time. If I give you information, you should trust that the information is accurate. Now, what do you want?" he repeated. Kakuzu took a moment to note that Zetsu's white half was unusually silent, theorizing that the seed ability was perhaps unique only to Black Zetsu, which meant that the two halves could actually function independently. Suddenly Zetsu's usefulness and power became even clearer. I require your assistance in finding someone. I believe that Akatsuki's contacts trumps mine in sheer quantity, meaning you have a better source of quality at your disposal for information. Who are you looking for? Zetsu demanded, cutting straight to the chase. Kakuzu told him, and a sinister smile spread over white Zetsu's lips, the only motion he had made thus far. I know just the person you want to find, Black Zetsu told him, the mirth evident in his voice. Kakuzu wasn't kidding when he said it would be a struggle to understand Jiangyu, thought Naruto. It had been 3 months since the former Takinin had bestowed the kenjutsu upon his student, and the first week had been spent in a struggle with the pain caused by the technique. Kakuzu had moved them out of the hotel room after that first night. A waste of money, he commented dismissively with a wave of his hand, and Naruto had spent that next week trying to use the technique and collapsing in agony. All the while, his teacher had watched him mutely. The bounty hunter had also been serious when he said that he wouldn't train Naruto in the ability. Arguably, it wasn't all that different from his regular teaching methodology, but Jiangyu was also far more difficult to understand than the basics of taijutsu or elemental ninjutsu. Naruto was all on his own as far as a training schedule and what to practice, which meant he didn't have to hear Kakuzu's mocking sneers and dry sarcasm with respect to his talents and progress, though he wondered if that wouldn't have been preferable to the silence. So far, Naruto had done very little with respect to using the black threads now within his body, though not really by choice. They seemed to retain some semblance of autonomy, almost sentience, and so he had spent the past 3 months attempting to find a way to control them. He was currently standing in front of a tree shirtless, with one arm outstretched in front on his body. Focusing intently upon the tree, several threads shot out from the bands on his arms and pierced the trunk in places that Naruto imagined were vital spots on the average human male. You seem to be making progress, brat. Naruto turned around to see his mentor standing behind him, arms folded across his chest. Yeah? He asked, excited. How long did it take you to do that? I would prefer not to embarrass you on such a prolific occasion, returned the hunter idly. When Naruto scowled, Kakuzu unfolded his arms and stepped towards the blonde. I came to let you know that I must venture out to find someone. I do not know when I will return. That's unusually vague, Naruto commented, eyebrow quirked in suspicion. His teacher normally gave him an idea of where he was going, or who he was hunting, or something. To hear none of that was strange. It is, agreed Kakuzu before turning away, elaborating no further. And there was one more thing. Before Naruto could ask what it was, Kakuzu had spun around and launched his hand forward, grabbing a kunai from the pouch on Naruto's thigh and bringing it in an upward arc at Naruto's arm. The blonde didn't even have time to react as Kakuzu used a combination of his monstrous strength and wind chakra to cleave straight through his arm, just below the elbow. His deed done, Kakuzu dropped the kunai, leaving Naruto staring at his arm on the ground. The blonde attempted to say something, yell at Kakuzu, scream in pain, but nothing came out. He remained mesmerized as, in the next second, threads popped out from the end of his arm on the ground and the stump of his arm still attached to his body. They mingled together and pulled the severed appendage from the forest floor to Naruto's forearm, disappearing under his skin, a band of stitch marks, an exact replica of the location of one of Kakuzu's, was the only thing left to show that the arm had ever been detached in the first place. Naruto looked up to either yell or thank Kakuzu, he wasn't entirely sure which, but the other ninja had already disappeared. It took about a month and a half of Kakuzu's precious time, but after following Zetsu's directions, he finally found who he was looking for. I have a request to make of you, he told the taller of the two men in front of him. The giant of a man listened to Kakuzu's request with a bored expression, but by the end he was grinning broadly. You've got yourself a deal, newbie, accepted the other man, his evil smirk revealing row upon row of sharp teeth. I'm always up for fresh meat. Was there a voice in my head right before I summoned Shiromori-sama?